Avarice Rose. Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be diving into a place that I absolutely loved researching, that I found absolutely fascinating, and that I have had a little bit of an obsession with for the last few years of my life. So grab a snack, grab something warm or iced coffee or, tea, whatever it is that you want. And we're just gonna dive right into this place. And once again, we are in Scotland, and today we are going to be going to Greyfriarskirk and exploring Greyfriars Bobby. So let's start off with the church, with the kirkyard. Grayfriarskirk is a parish church, and it's from the Church of Scotland, located in the old town of Edinburgh, Scotland. So we're still in Edinburgh. Fancy that. Greyfriars traces its origin to the southwest parish of Edinburgh, founded in 1598. The church is named for the Observantine Franciscans, or the Greyfriars, who arrived in Edinburgh from the Netherlands in the mid-15th century and were granted a land for friary at the south end of the borough. When the Scottish Reformation happened, meaning Scotland went from Catholic to Protestant, the grounds were abandoned as a friary and were repurposed as a cemetery, in which the current church was constructed between 1602 and 1620. Greyfriars was also damaged during the quote-unquote reign of Oliver Cromwell, and in 1845 fires ravaged throughout the entirety of the church. After that, it was reconstructed and stands as we still see it today. The church is very well known for its missions work within the parish, and it continues into the present day through the church's work with the Grassmarket Community Project and the Greyfriars Charters Center. Greyfriars holds weekly Gaelic services, maintaining a tradition of Gaelic worship in Edinburgh that goes back to the beginning of the 18th century. So, a lot of history here. Now let's talk about this national covenant that was signed in the graveyard. And it was signed here because graveyard was a place of legal free public assembly in 1638. Following the Battle of Bothwell Bridge, which happened on June 22nd, 1679, some 1,200 prisoners were brought to Edinburgh. There being too numerous for containment in the prison or castle, a makeshift prison was formed in a field in the south of Greyfriarskirk to hold about 400 not containable elsewhere. So 400 people were brought to the kirkyard to be held. This area was conveniently enclosed by two sides, one being the Flodden Wall, and on a third side, or the west side, was the high enclosing wall of George Heriot's School. And the fourth side faced the churchyard and was separated by an easily patrolled and guarded picket fence, so they couldn't really get out. A remaining strip of land was sandwiched between Bedlam and George Heriot's School, was used for additional ground from around the 1700s. The idea at the time was to style it to build enclosed vaults, and this is the dominant form of burial in this section of the kirkyard. As the vaults did not exist at the time of the area's prison use, despite their potential to be used as prison cells, this was never the case. So those vaults didn't exist at the time that the Covenanters were imprisoned there. The area was open to public view until around 1990, but it was thereafter locked by the City of Edinburgh Council to stem persistent vandalism and drug users. The area is accessible during the day by special arrangement with the guides of Grayfriarskirk during the opening hours, and at night by going on a City of the Dead tour where the Black Mausoleum can be visited. So in order to talk about one of the main poltergeists or possible potential ghosts that haunts Grayfriarskirk, is that of George Mackenzie, also known as Bloody Mackenzie. George is also known as the Mackenzie poltergeist, and he is said to be one of the most aggressive and active paranormal figures around. He was known during his lifetime as a ruthless persecutor of the Scottish Covenanters, a Presbyterian movement in the 17th century. Mackenzie's spirit, according to legend, was released in 1999 when a homeless man looking for a spot to sleep broke into his final resting place, the Black Mausoleum. It was a fate predicted by the famed Scottish poet Robert Louis Stevenson, who referenced Mackenzie in his 1879 book, Edinburgh Picturesque Notes, writing, "When a man's soul is certainly in hell, his body will scarce lie quiet in a tomb, however costly. Some time or other the door must open, and the reprobate come forth in the abhorrent garments of the grave." So this connects back to the Covenanters' prison. It is connected to Grayfriarskirk, like I said previously, and is blocked off by a stone gateway and locked by Bloody Mackenzie's mausoleum. And it housed about 1,200 unfortunate members of a failed anti-government revolution in 1679. The conditions at the prison were so brutal that only 200 of the 57 prisoners came out alive. A portion of those escaped or actually pled loyalty to the crown 4 months after their mass incarceration. Mackenzie really went after these Covenanters and punished them for their religious insurrections. If you go to Greyfriarskirk and you take one of the tour of the City of the Dead tours, you may encounter a entity, a poltergeist, a demon, whatever it is that haunts this place. People who conduct these tours or these nighttime excursions around the graveyard have reported some nasty stuff happening to people. Many participants come out of the prison and mausoleum with bruises, burns, scratches, and even broken bones attributed to long dead prisoners and their violent oppressor. In 2006, the Scotsman wrote that there had been 450 documented attacks, 140 people who had collapsed, and even suspicion that the Mackenzie poltergeist was responsible for the death of one local psychic. So they say that the Bloody Mackenzie is not happy being buried in the Black Museum in Grayfriars, just around the corner from the Covenanters prison. And they say that these attacks started back in the 90s, pointedly in 1999, when a man who was homeless broke into Mackenzie's vault and allegedly unleashed this evil force. When the man tried to break into the casket, he stepped backward and fell into an old pit containing the rotting remains of plague victims from centuries earlier, and he ran screaming allegedly from the Black Mausoleum. Most of these attacks do happen around the Black Mausoleum. They go in and people collapse, pass out, scream, run away in fear, touched, scratched, like things like I said. Some people have even, you know, had hospitalizations, allegedly, after going here. Another person who unfortunately passed away, supposedly, allegedly, is an exorcist who tried to do an exorcism at Grayfriars. He died a week later from a heart attack, and I don't know if that was the same exorcist who was the psychic or not. I know that at least 2 people have been quote-unquote allegedly linked to die from Grayfriars. So that's creepy. When you go to take these tours, like you can take the Mackenzie poltergeist, you're warned, like up front. They're just like, listen, the Mackenzie poltergeist can cause genuine physical and mental distress. Join the tour at your own risk. And they do suggest that if you have anything electrical, like a pacemaker, that you don't come on this tour, because the poltergeist or these entities that are involved inside this kirkyard or this mausoleum that people get close to likes to play with electronics. And if you have if you're someone who has a pacemaker, that means that your heart needs to be regulated for beating. My grandmother had one. When she passed away, her pacemaker was still going, which was really, really weird. but she wasn't there anymore, but her pacemaker was still going. So that just shows you that that's so important to keep people alive. And if you go in here, you have a pacemaker, and say old Mackenzie wants to zap your pacemaker's battery, that's not good. So they warn people, you know, if you have pacemakers, hearing aids, anything like that, just make sure that they don't lose power, and that you're highly, especially if you have a pacemaker though, because you can lose battery in your hearing aids and stuff like that, but your heart is important to your overall function of life. So they're like, yeah, don't come in here if you have a pacemaker. Yeah. So these attacks escalated to the point where the city of Edinburgh closed off the Covenanters prison from the actual public. The city only now allows controlled visits to that section as part of the City of the Dead Ghost Walk. Even the city was like, we gotta do something about this. Now, another a little bit more friendlier ghost that is cited pretty frequently around Grayfriarskirk is that of Grayfriars Bobby. So outside of Grayfriarskirk is the statue of a dog, and the dog is called Grayfriars Bobby. And this dog is a Skye Terrier, and legend has it that Bobby belonged to a man named John Gray. When John passed, Bobby stood watch over his owner's grave for 14 years. That's 98 dog years. And Bobby died in 1872 and was buried inside Grayfriars, not too far from where John is buried. And after that, people started hearing sounds of barking even when they didn't see any dogs around. They see the apparition of a small dog running around, and people will say he's still there, guarding the grave of his owner, John Gray, which is pretty sweet. Dogs are pretty loyal, and that would be one that I wouldn't mind seeing, because apparently he's not terrifying like a hellhound. He's Skye Terrier size, super minds his own business, doesn't do much bother to anybody. Some historians now say that the pup did exist, the dog did exist. However, his extended mourning, like standing over his owner's grave, was probably fabricated by the cemetery and a nearby restaurant owner to encourage tourism. And he most likely stuck around for the food and attention he got from the visitors who passed by. So, just another thing to keep in mind. Another very interesting, cool note on Grayfriarskirk is the cemetery is just steps from the now landmark Elephant House Cafe, where J.K. Rowling first scribbled her lines of Harry Potter in a window seat overlooking George Heriot's school, which is uncannily a lot like Hogwarts. And among the graves in Grayfriarskirk yard is one with a headstone reading Thomas Riddle, which many fans think may have inspired the birth name of Lord Voldemort, the series villain. Harry Potter fans will make some pilgrimages to the site, leaving notes and flowers on the 197-year-old grave, as well as take a little bit of a tour of Grayfriarskirk. If you are interested in learning more about Grayfriarskirk yard and Grayfriars Bobby and the surrounding area of Edinburgh, I would highly suggest that you do your own search on YouTube. There are lots of walkthroughs, there are lots of walkthrough tours that people do, lots of people who have gotten special permission by the City of the Dead tour to go and actually kind of ghost hunt. Lots of interactions, lots of interesting things that people have found over the years in Grayfriars, so I would highly suggest that you go check those out yourself. So that's all that I have for you today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you know of any other places in Scotland that I should be checking out. Next week should be going back to castles and interior homes and things like that, before we take off a little bit to the west and a little bit to the north for Wales and Northern Ireland, and then eventually Ireland, Europe, and we circle back to America. So I hope you guys are staying safe wherever you are. staying sane wherever you are, and just being good to yourselves. So, one love, guys.